Saudi Arabia, the heart of the Muslim world, recently became the last nation on earth to realize that women can drive. 100 years from now, when people have forgotten this interesting bit of history, Muslim apologists will be claiming that Saudi Arabia was the first nation to let women drive, and that Muslims invented cars. Why will they be spouting such total nonsense? They'll be spouting nonsense because that's what Muslim apologists are trained to do, and non-Muslims are all too eager to help them lie about Islam. Exhibit A. Qasim Rashid's article, How the Teachings of Islam Could Help Us Prevent More Sexual Abuse Scandals, published by the Dhimmi Pendant. Given all the attention Qasim got from his article, I guess we can all look forward to his follow-up piece, How Islamic Grooming Gangs Can Help Your Kafir Daughter Learn Her True Worth. Of course, it's somewhat difficult for me to criticize Qasim's propaganda because in my last video I found myself defending his central thesis. When I saw the title of his article, I thought, Qasim's right. By making it far, far easier for men to abuse women, and by making it far, far more difficult for women to prove that they've been abused, Islam could radically reduce the number of sexual scandals in the West. What a blessing Islam would be for sexual predators. Sadly, the reasons Qasim gives for his thesis are completely inconsistent with the reasons I give for his thesis, which means that his reasons are completely wrong. Let's take a look at the article. Qasim begins with a bunch of social justice warrior gibberish about rape culture, proving that he's graduated from the Linda Sarsour School for using the left to advance Sharia. But he eventually gets to some arguments that are based on the Quran and the life of Muhammad, so let's skip to those. Qasim writes, in a recent internationally broadcast lecture given live before roughly 6,000 Muslim women, the Khalifa of Islam said, Chapter 4, verse 2 of the Holy Quran clarifies that women were not created out of the body of a man or from his rib. Rather, the Quran testifies to the fact that men and women were created from a single soul and are of the same kind and species. Notice that Qasim doesn't quote what the Quran actually says. He quotes what the Caliph of Islam says that the Quran says. Who is the Caliph of Islam? Is it Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS? No, that's a rival caliph. The Caliph of Islam here is Mirza Masroor Ahmed, the current leader of the Ahmadis. This caliph cites Surah 4, verse 2 of the Quran. But Ahmadi Qurans are different from normal Qurans. They're usually a verse off because they count the in the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, at the beginning of most surahs as a separate verse. Most Qurans don't have the Bismillahs as separate verses. So Surah 4, verse 2 in an Ahmadi Quran is Surah 4, verse 1 in a normal Quran. And what does the first verse of Surah 4 say, according to the Caliph of Islam? It clarifies that women were not created out of the body of a man or from his rib. Rather, the Quran testifies to the fact that men and women were created from a single soul and are of the same kind and species. Is that right, Caliph? I hope you don't mind, but I've learned over the years not to trust what Muslim apologists say without looking it up for myself. So let me see if I can find the verse. Oh, here it is. O mankind, be dutiful to your Lord, who created you from a single person, Adam, and from him, Adam, he created his wife, Eve. Eve was created from Adam. Allah says the same thing in Surah 7, verse 189. It is he who has created you from a single person, Adam, and then he has created from him his wife, Eve, in order that he might enjoy the pleasure of living with her. What does the Quran mean when it says that Allah created Eve from Adam? Well, Muhammad clarifies in Sahih Muslim 36:43. The Messenger of Allah said, Woman was created from a rib. It will never become straight for you in any way. If you wish to benefit from her, then you may benefit from her along with her crookedness. But if you try to straighten her, you will break her, and breaking her is divorcing her. So, according to Allah, Eve was created from Adam. According to Muhammad, Eve was created from Adam's rib. According to Mirza Masroor Ahmed, Eve was not created from Adam and certainly not from Adam's rib. Whom should we listen to? Allah and Muhammad or Mirza Masroor Ahmed? Well, if you're Qasim Rashid, you have to listen to the leader of your sect, so naturally he's going to listen to Mirza Masroor Ahmed, even if the good caliph completely contradicts Allah and Muhammad. Now we know why Muslims generally don't take Qasim or his caliph seriously. Perhaps he'll do better in his next point. Thus, the Quran 4:2 first establishes men and women as equal beings. Chapter 4:20 then forbids men from forcing a woman to act against her will, thereby ensuring women maintain autonomy and self-determination. Notice he claims that 4:2, i.e. 4:1, establishes men and women as equal beings, specifically because it doesn't say that Eve was created from Adam or that Eve was created from Adam's rib. I've never understood what this would have to do with inequality. I was born from my mother. This has nothing to do with me being inferior to my mother. But Qasim does believe that if a religion teaches that Eve was created from Adam, then the religion is saying that women are inferior to men. And as we've seen, that's exactly what Islam teaches if we go to the Quran and Muhammad to learn about Islam and not to the Ahmadi Caliph. So in Orthodox Islam, women are inferior to men, according to Qasim Rashid. Qasim also says that 4:20, i.e. 4:19, forbids men from forcing a woman to act against her will, thereby ensuring women maintain autonomy and self-determination. If you learn anything from this video, learn the importance of always reading a verse to see what it actually says. Surah 4, verse 19. O you who believe, you are forbidden to inherit women against their will, and you should not treat them with harshness, that you may take away part of the mahar you have given them, unless they commit open illegal sexual intercourse and live with them honorably. If you dislike them, it may be that you dislike a thing, and Allah brings through it a great deal of good. Let's go through this verse line by line to see where Qasim is getting his claim that the Quran forbids forcing women to act against their will, thereby ensuring women maintain autonomy and self-determination. O you who believe, you are forbidden to inherit women against their will. This verse is about inheriting women. In certain areas of pre-Islamic Arabia, when a man died, his sons would inherit his wives. They could then keep the women from remarrying until the women turned over any money they had or any inheritance they were given or the bride money they were given by the family when they married the man. And the Quran, to its credit, tells Muslims that they can't inherit the wives of their fathers. And you should not treat them with harshness. The commentators say that this specifically refers to keeping them captive so that they can't remarry. That you may take away part of the mahar you have given them. Since the family gave the woman money when she married into the family, some pre-Islamic Arabs thought that she had to give it back before leaving the family, unless they commit open illegal sexual intercourse. So if they've committed some sexual sin, you can take their property and their inheritance and live with them honorably. If your father's widows don't end up remarrying, live with them honorably. If you dislike them, it may be that you dislike a thing and Allah brings through it a great deal of good. So if you don't like your father's widows, too bad, don't steal their money. Now, this is what amazes me. This verse was a good response to a bad practice. Sons would inherit their father's widows as property and then keep the widows captive until they handed over the money. Surah 4, verse 19 of the Quran says, don't do that. That's good. It's not helpful for people today because we don't have that practice, but it was a positive change. And a Muslim today could reasonably point to that and say, here's something good in the Quran. But that's not what they say. They have to exaggerate. This verse declares that a man must never force a woman to act against her will in any way, and that women are completely autonomous. No, it doesn't. It says that you can't inherit your father's wife against her will, and that you shouldn't seize her inheritance unless she commits some sexual sin. That's all it says. But Qasim's not done exaggerating what Surah 4 verse 19 says. He continues. This verse also commands men to consort with women in kindness, forbidding men from so much as thinking ill of their wives. This preempts emotional and mental abuse. Now he claims that this verse forbids men from so much as thinking ill of their wives, thus preempting emotional and mental abuse. Didn't we go through the entire verse? The verse wasn't even talking about how men should treat their wives. It was talking about how men should treat the wives of their dead fathers. But according to Qasim, this verse about not inheriting your father's widows means that you're never, ever allowed to so much as think ill of your own wife. Your wife could go on a killing spree, and as a Muslim, you wouldn't be allowed to have so much as a bad thought about her because of a verse about not inheriting your father's wives when he dies. If I didn't know better, which I don't, I might think that Qasim is thoroughly ignorant of what the Quran teaches. But maybe he'll redeem himself with this next part. Chapter 435 furthermore prevents violence against women by forcing men to control themselves and never resort to physically harming women, preempting physical abuse. Holy Islamic child brides and sex slaves! Qasim is starting to sound like a parody of an awful Muslim apologist. If I were to write an article pretending to be an awful Muslim apologist in order to make fun of Islamic apologetics, this is exactly what I would write. So, Surah 4 verse 35 of the Ahmadi Quran, i.e. Surah 4 verse 34 of normal Qurans, commands Muslim men never to resort to physically harming women. That's odd. I quoted this verse in my last video to show that the Quran definitely allows Muslim men to beat their wives. My memory must be playing tricks on me. Let's refresh my memory by reading the verse. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women because Allah has made one of them to excel the other. So men excel women. That's weird. I thought that the Quran promoted equality. And because they spend to support them from their means. Therefore, the righteous women are devoutly obedient to Allah and to their husbands. Righteous women are obedient and guard in the husband's absence what Allah orders them to guard, e.g. their chastity, their husband's property. As to those women on whose part you see ill conduct, admonish them first, next, refuse to share their beds, and last, beat them. Lightly, if it is useful. Notice that the lightly is in parentheses because it's not in the Arabic. The Quran simply says, beat them. But if they return to obedience, seek not against them means of annoyance. Surely Allah is ever most high, most great. This is a verse that says, as clearly as Allah says anything, that men can beat their wives. Somehow, Qasim Rashid reads this verse and concludes, this verse is saying that men must never physically harm women. How can Qasim read words off a page and conclude that the words are saying the exact opposite of what they're actually saying? Did he fail first grade reading comprehension, or is he deliberately deceiving his readers? The Quran further obliges men to provide for a woman's every financial need while holding that anything a woman earns is hers alone, preempting financial abuse. The man has to provide for the woman, but the woman gets to keep whatever she earns? That's strange. I thought that men and women were completely equal in Islam. It's true that the deal for men is that they provide for women financially in exchange for the obedience, especially the sexual obedience of the women. But I don't see how this prevents abuse. As we just saw, this is the justification for abuse. Your husband provides for you in exchange for your obedience. So if you're not obedient, he can beat you into submission. Women aren't required to financially provide for men. However, Muhammad does suggest that it's not good for a woman to spend her money in a way her husband doesn't approve of. Sunan an-Nasai 32:33. It was narrated that Abu Huraira said, "It was said to the Messenger of Allah, which woman is best? He said, the one who makes him happy when he looks at her, obeys him when he commands her, and she does not go against his wishes with regard to herself nor her wealth." So, husbands can say to their wives, if you want to be a good wife, look good, obey me, and don't do anything I don't want you to do with your body or your money. Qasim continues, and when it comes to the Islamic concept of hijab, it is men who are first commanded to never gawk at women and instead guard their private parts and chastity, regardless of how women choose to dress, preempting sexual abuse. Based on the reputation Qasim has earned as we've gone through his article, I'd say we need to look at what the Quran says about coverings. Surah 33, verse 59. O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers to draw their cloaks, veils, all over their bodies, i.e. screen themselves completely except the eyes or one eye to see the way. That will be better, that they should be known as free, respectable women, so as not to be annoyed. And Allah is ever oft forgiving, most merciful. The part that says so as not to be annoyed is just a peculiar feature of the Hilali Khan translation. They use annoyed in a pretty wide sense. Other translators translate this as so that they won't be abused or so that they won't be molested. In fact, since we're having a discussion with an Ahmadi, let's go to the official website of the Ahmadis and see what their Quran says. Of course, it will be Surah 33, verse 60 in their Quran. The verse reads, O Prophet, tell thy wives and thy daughters and the women of the believers that they should pull down upon them of their outer cloaks from their heads over their faces. That is more likely that they may thus be recognized and not molested. What does Allah say? Ladies, put on your burqas so that you won't be molested. If you get molested, it's your fault for not covering up. But isn't that the exact opposite of what Qasim says that Islam teaches? Moving on. Prophet Muhammad himself illustrated this point. In a famous incident, a woman described as strikingly beautiful approached the Prophet to seek his guidance on some religious matters. The Prophet's companion, Al-Fadl, began to stare at her because of her beauty. Noting this, the Prophet Muhammad did not scold the woman for her attire, but instead he reached his hand backwards, catching Al-Fadl's chin, and turned his face to the other side so that he would not gaze at her. Now, think about this. In the hadith Qasim refers to, a Muslim woman comes to Muhammad to ask if she can take the pilgrimage on behalf of her father. Muhammad says yes, and he catches his buddy Al-Fadl checking her out. Muhammad grabs Al-Fadl by the chin and turns his face away. Qasim is no stranger to exaggeration, so watch what he concludes from this. Accordingly, the Prophet Muhammad, by example, demonstrated that the burden of modesty, respect, and combating abuse of women rests on men. Indeed, men must take the lead in stopping such sexual abuse. So, Muhammad didn't blame a particular woman for the way she was dressed. Therefore, men are the ones who are responsible, according to Islam. But there's no indication in the hadith that the woman was dressed inappropriately, so why would she be blamed? She was a devout Muslimah going to Muhammad to ask about taking the pilgrimage. I think we can safely assume that she would have been dressed pretty modestly. Al-Fadl was checking her out anyway, so Muhammad turned his head away. How would this mean that in a case where a woman is dressed inappropriately by Islamic standards, she's not to blame if someone gropes her, especially when we've already seen that Allah commands women to cover themselves so that they won't be molested? Qasim continues. After all, while the Quran obliges women to dress modestly as a covenant with God, Islam prescribes no punishment whatsoever for women who choose to dress otherwise. Well, again, the Quran says that women are supposed to cover themselves so that they won't be molested, so being molested would seem to be a punishment for women who don't cover themselves. If Qasim just means that the Quran doesn't say the penalty for dressing immodestly is such and such number of lashes, he's correct, but it doesn't say that there's a punishment for gawking at women either. You're just disobeying Allah. I should point out, however, that there's an indirect punishment here. Surah 4 verse 65 of the Quran says that if a Muslim doesn't fully submit to everything Muhammad says, he or she isn't a real Muslim. So if Allah and Muhammad command women to cover themselves, and a woman doesn't cover herself, she's not a real Muslim, according to Surah 4, verse 65. But if she's recited the Shahada, and she's no longer a Muslim, she's an apostate. And the penalty for a female apostate, according to most of the traditional schools of Islamic jurisprudence, is death. I'm not pointing this out because I think that the Islamic penalty for inappropriate attire is death. I'm pointing it out because it's the Islamic justification for honor killings. In places like Pakistan, where men will kill their own daughters or sisters for dressing inappropriately, they can justify the killing by claiming that the actions of the daughter or sister showed that she was an apostate. So I'm not sure how any of this is really going to help women. Qasim concludes his case with this. On the contrary, on numerous occasions, Prophet Muhammad punished an accused rapist on the testimony of the rape survivor alone. I'm not aware of numerous occasions when Muhammad punished an accused rapist solely based upon the testimony of the rape victim. I can think of one hadith where a woman was raped and she identified the rapist, and Muhammad was about to have him stoned to death, but then another man stood up and said, "You've got the wrong guy. I'm the one who raped her." So Muhammad let the first man go and ordered the second man to be stoned. Here Muhammad was about to execute a man based on the testimony of a woman, but it turned out to be the wrong man. This hadith is used to show that the testimony of women is unreliable. Not very helpful to women. If Qasim has references for these numerous occasions of Muhammad punishing accused rapists based solely on the testimony of the rape victims, I'd be happy to read them. Until then, Qasim has been wrong about almost everything he's said, so I can't believe anything he says without verification. Please share your references in the comments section. Qasim. Finally, in this environment of gender equity, women in Islam rise to the rank of legal scholars, warriors, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists while lovingly embracing identities as mothers and housewives. Look, if a woman in Islam rises to the rank of a legal scholar or warrior or a leader, it's not because of Islamic teachings, it's in spite of Islamic teachings. Muhammad said that a woman's testimony is worth half the testimony of a man because women are intellectually deficient. What kind of scholar could a woman possibly be? Muhammad said that the best jihad for a woman is taking the pilgrimage to Mecca. What kind of warrior could a woman possibly be? Muhammad said that a nation that has a woman as a ruler will never succeed. What kind of a leader could a woman possibly be? So, have we seen anything that would give us the slightest indication that Islamic teachings could ever help prevent sexual abuse? I certainly haven't. Qasim had an entire article to make his case. I'm sure he used what he regards as his strongest evidence. Since he had to either exaggerate or outright lie to defend his claims, doesn't that suggest that maybe there just isn't anything in the Muslim sources that would help women? If there were a good point somewhere, Qasim would have used it, wouldn't he? So Qasim needs to stop insisting that the teachings of Islam would help anyone but sexual abusers. The misrepresentations and deceptions of Qasim and his so-called caliph are absolutely powerless to stop the true Islam from rising to the surface. In other words, suppose Qasim, with the help of the Demi-Pendant and other Western news sources, were successful in convincing a bunch of gullible Americans and Europeans that the teachings of Islam are good for women. When people decide to learn the teachings of Islam, are they going to go to Qasim Rashid and Mirza Masroor Ahmed, or are they going to go to the Quran and Hadith? As much as Qasim and his so-called caliph want people to avoid the Quran and the Hadith, some people will end up going there anyway. And when they go to the Quran and the Hadith, what will they find? They'll find that Muslim men can have numerous wives and endless sex slaves, but that Muslim women can't have numerous husbands or any sex slaves. So much for equality. They'll find that Muslim men can beat their wives into submission, but that women can't beat their husbands into submission. So much for equality. They'll find that Muslim men can hire prostitutes as long as they marry them for the evening. They'll find that grown Muslim men can marry and have sex with prepubescent girls. They'll find that women are, by nature, stupid and immoral, that the testimony of a woman is half as reliable as a man's testimony, that women are inferior, and that wives are the property of their husbands. They'll find that Allah commands women to veil themselves in order to avoid being molested, which naturally leads many Muslim men to declare, if a woman doesn't obey Allah, if she doesn't wear a veil, she must want to be molested. Let's give her what she wants. Oh, look, there's an uncovered 12-year-old girl right there. Sorry, Qasim, but true Islam is disastrous for women. And we're just not interested in your watered-down, whitewashed Walt Disney version of the Quran and the Hadith. All the pretty wrapping in the world can't change what's in that box that you're trying to sell us. But we're not done yet. A bunch of people in the comments section wanted me to make this a trilogy, and their wish is my command. So next time we'll have an epic showdown of sexual predators. Muhammad versus Harvey Weinstein. I may even toss Bill Cosby in there so we can see how he matches up with Islam's predator prophet. Thank you, Qasim, for giving everyone this opportunity to learn more about your predator prophet. Your article has been so helpful that after finishing the trilogy, I might just make this a tetralogy. Yes, I think there will be a part 4.